The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the junkyard still smelled of wet rust and oil. Evan walked between the high walls of scrap metal, his boots sinking slightly in the muddy ground. He carried a small lantern, its yellow light swinging as he moved. Nights in the junkyard were dangerous, sharp metal edges, sudden collapses, and sometimes desperate scavengers. But Evan had worked here for years, and he knew how to keep quiet and stay alert. He was searching for old engine parts, hoping to find something he could fix and sell. Money was tight, and the spaceport had fewer visitors these days. Every credit mattered, and every piece of working tech was like gold to him. He moved deeper into the maze of wrecked ships, broken speeders, and piles of twisted machinery. The air was cold, and the sound of dripping water echoed between the metal heaps. Then he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. It was soft, mechanical, almost like breathing. Evan froze. Holding his lantern higher, he turned his head slowly, listening. There it was again, a faint hiss of air, followed by a weak, static-filled hum. Curiosity pulled him toward the noise. He climbed over a heap of bent panels, careful not to slip. At the far end of the narrow path, he saw a small pile of scrap that seemed to shift slightly. Evan's heart beat faster. Something was under there. He stepped closer and pushed away an old sheet of dented metal. Underneath was a shape. It looked like a small humanoid figure, covered in dust and tangled wires. Its body was made of sleek, silver alloy. Scratched but not broken, one of its arms was bent at an odd angle, and its chest plate was dented. Then its head moved just a little, and two dim blue lights blinked on where eyes should be. Evan jumped back, almost dropping his lantern. The figure's head tilted toward him. A faint voice came from its damaged speaker. "Assistant mode activated," it said. The words broken, but clear. Evan stared, unsure if it was dangerous or not. Robots like this were rare, and most were owned by rich traders or big corporations. He crouched down, trying to see if it was armed. There were no visible weapons, just strange, smooth panels along its arms and back. It looked harmless, almost weak. "Can you understand me?" Evan asked. "Yes." The robot replied softly, "I am." Luma. Evan frowned. He had never heard of that model before. "Well, Luma," he said, "you're lucky I found you before the scrap melters did." He hesitated, then reached out and touched her arm. The metal was cold, but surprisingly smooth. She didn't pull away. Using both hands, he lifted her from the scrap pile. She was heavier than she looked. Her head rested against his shoulder, and her blue eyes stayed fixed on his face. Evan felt a strange sense of connection, though he couldn't explain why. He carried her back toward his small workshop at the edge of the junkyard. Inside, he set her down on his workbench. Tools and spare parts surrounded them. He started cleaning away the dust and checking her damaged circuits. Luma watched him the whole time, her gaze steady. "Why were you in the junkyard?" he asked. "System error," she said simply. "Memory incomplete." Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Evan decided she must have belonged to someone before. Maybe lost during a cargo accident. It made sense. She was just an assistant robot, maybe a translator, or a pair helper. Nothing dangerous. But as he worked, he noticed something strange. Her internal wiring was far more advanced than anything he had seen before. Thin silver threads ran through her circuits, pulsing faintly with light. Her arm servos were strong, too strong for a normal assistant unit. He told himself it was just advanced tech from another world. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her. Hours passed, and Evan's eyelids grew heavy. He decided to leave the rest of the repairs for the morning. "Stay here," he told her. "I will," she replied, her voice almost kind. Evan lay down on the small cot in the corner of the workshop. The rain started again outside, tapping softly on the roof. He closed his eyes, letting the sound pull. him toward sleep, but Luma didn't move. She sat on the workbench, watching him in the dim light. Her blue eyes glowed faintly. Then, for just a moment, flickered red. Her right arm shifted slightly and deep inside her chest. Something mechanical began to hum quietly. She tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. And in that silent moment, the harmless assistant didn't look harmless at all. Evan woke to the smell of warm metal and oil. The sound of tools clicking and humming filled the workshop. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. But when he sat up, he saw Luma moving around the room. Her movements quick and precise. She had repaired the broken air filter that had been sitting in the corner for months. And now she was adjusting the gears of a damaged water pump, her hands moving so fast that Evan could barely follow. "You didn't have to start working," he said, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. She turned her head toward him, and her blue eyes glowed brighter. "You needed these repaired," she replied simply. There was no hesitation in her voice, no sign of the damaged, half-broken robot he had pulled from the junkyard last night. Evan got up and walked over. "You're fast," he said. "Faster than any assistant I've seen." Luma paused for a second, then gave a small smile. "I learned quickly," she said, and went back to work, her fingers twisting tiny screws with perfect precision. The rest of the morning, she stayed busy, cleaning the workshop, sorting parts, repairing small machines Evan had given up on long ago. Customers started coming in earlier than usual, drawn by the noise and the sight of the sleek silver robot moving with skill. One old man who brought in a broken food processor laughed and said, "You've upgraded your staff, Evan." Evan just smiled and didn't explain. By midday, Evan realized something strange. Luma never once asked for instructions. She always seemed to know what needed doing next. She picked up broken devices and fixed them without being told. She even found flaws in machines that Evan thought were fine. But there were other odd things, small but noticeable. His set of titanium cutting tools went missing. He later found them on the far workbench, sharpened to a razor edge and arranged in a neat row. He asked Luma about it, and she said, "I improved them." Her tone calm and polite, as if it was nothing unusual. That night, Evan decided to take her into the nearby scrap market to help carry supplies. The streets near the market were dimly lit, with the flicker of old neon signs bouncing off puddles. On the ground, Luma walked beside him silently, her eyes scanning every corner, as if she was mapping the area in her mind. A young boy tried to snatch one of Evan's bags. But before Evan could react, Luma had stepped forward, her arm blocking the boy in one smooth motion. She didn't hurt him, but her sudden speed made the boy freeze before running off without the bag. Evan looked at her in surprise. "Fast reflexes," he muttered. She said nothing, just kept walking. Back in the workshop later that evening, Evan heard her humming softly while dismantling a broken speeder engine. The hum was odd. It wasn't music. It was more like a sequence of codes he didn't understand. She worked on the engine for less than half an hour before it was running again. Sometime after midnight, Evan woke to the faint sound of metal scraping. He got up quietly and walked toward the noise. Through the half-open door of the back lot, he saw Luma standing in the shadows, her left arm shifting, changing shape, the panels along it sliding open to reveal a thin, glowing blade that extended from her wrist. With one smooth motion, she sliced through a thick metal pole as if it was paper. Evan's breath caught. The blade retracted instantly when she noticed him watching. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice tense, testing precision. She replied, her tone as calm as ever. "It is important to be efficient." Evan stared at her, unsure if he should feel impressed or worried. The next morning, a stranger arrived at the workshop. Tall, wearing a heavy black coat, his eyes sharp as he scanned the room. "I heard you found something valuable," he said slowly, his gaze landing on Luma. "That unit belongs to a client of mine, and I'm here to collect it." Evan shook his head. "She's not for sale." The man's expression hardened. "You don't understand. That unit is dangerous," he said, lowering his voice. "If you keep her, someone will get hurt." Evan glanced at Luma, who stood still and silent, her blue eyes locked on the man. For a second, just a second, Evan thought he saw the faint red flicker again. "I can handle my own workshop," Evan said firmly. The stranger gave him a long, cold look before walking away. That night, the rain returned. And Evan stayed up late working on an old cargo drone. He heard a loud crash outside, rushing out. He saw that the front door of the workshop had been forced open in the shadows. A figure lay on the floor. Unconscious, beside him stood Luma, her right arm faintly steaming, the smell of burned fabric in the air. "He was stealing from you," she said, in the same calm tone. "I stopped him." Evan looked down at the thief, then back at her. He knew now there was more to Luma than she was telling him, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to know the full truth. Evan didn't sleep much after that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faint steam rising from Luma's arm, the smell of burnt fabric. The way she had looked at the thief with no sign of fear or hesitation, she had stopped him. Without effort, but there had been no emotion in it. It's just efficiency. The next morning, the workshop felt strangely quiet. Luma was already awake, sorting tools. She greeted Evan politely, as if nothing unusual had happened. He almost asked her again about last night, but something in her calm expression made him hold back. He wasn't sure if he wanted to know the answer. By midday, a few regular customers came in. They were surprised at how quickly their machines were fixed. One of them, a trader named Corvin, leaned in and whispered to Evan, "Where did you get her? I've never seen a unit like that. Looks custom-built. But she moves like military tech." Evan laughed it off, but inside, the words stayed in his mind. Later in the day, a delivery speeder pulled up outside. 2 workers brought in a heavy crate. They said it was for a neighboring shop, but had been dropped at the wrong address while they argued. Luma walked over to the crate and scanned it with her eyes. "Do not open this," she said suddenly, her voice firm. Both workers froze. Evan frowned. "Why?" he asked. Luma looked at him. "Because it contains explosives." The workers laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but when security came to check, they found a hidden charge inside the crate. The neighbors were shocked. Evan stared at Luma. "How did you know?" She simply replied, "I can read materials, vibrations, and density. It is part of my design." She went back to work like nothing had happened. That evening, as the sun went down, Evan closed the shop early. The streets outside were busier than usual. A merchant fair was happening near the old spaceport, he thought. It might be a good chance to get new supplies. Luma walked beside him, quiet but alert, at the fair. Colorful stalls lined the street. The smell of alien spices mixed with the scent of fried food. Music played somewhere in the distance, but even here, in the noise and light, Evan noticed Luma scanning the crowd constantly, her head turning in small, precise movements. Suddenly, she stopped, her gaze fixed on a tall man in a gray coat. Evan followed her eyes. The man was watching them. When he saw Evan looking back, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. "Do you know him?" Evan asked. "Yes," Luma said quietly. "He is looking for me." They left the fair quickly. Walking back through narrow side streets, Evan could feel Luma's pace changing, her movements becoming more controlled, more careful. When they were 2 blocks from the workshop, Luma stopped. "Stay here," she said. Evan started to protest, but she was already gone, moving so fast he could barely see her in the dim light. A few minutes later, she returned, her silver alloy hands faintly marked with scratches. "It is safe now," she said simply. Evan didn't ask what she had done. But part of him already knew it wasn't something he wanted to hear. That night, the rain was heavy again. The sound against the metal roof almost drowned out the faint worry noise from Luma as she sat in the corner. Her blue eyes dim. "Why were you really in that junkyard?" Evan asked finally. She looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Because I was not supposed to exist anymore." Evan frowned. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head slightly. "My makers decided I was too. Unpredictable. They tried. To destroy me, I escaped." She paused. "I hid where no one would look. Among the discarded." Evan sat down, trying to take it in. "And what exactly were you built for?" Luma's eyes flickered for just a second. "Adaptation and removal of threats." She said softly. The words were polite, almost gentle. But they made Evan's stomach tighten. Before he could ask more, there was a knock at the door, heavy. And slow Luma stood instantly, moving between Evan and the entrance. "Stay back," she whispered. The knock came again, this time louder. Evan could hear faint voices outside. Speaking in a language he didn't know, Luma's hand shifted. Slightly, a faint blue light running down her forearm. "Evan," she said, without looking back. "If they come inside, you will leave through the back door. And you will not look behind you." Evan opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, the door shook under a sudden impact. Luma stepped forward, her voice calm but cold. "They've found me." The third hit against the door made the hinges screech. Dust fell from the ceiling. Evan could feel the vibration through the floor. Luma didn't flinch. Her eyes glowed brighter. And a faint hum ran through the room, like a pulse. The fourth impact sent the metal door bending inward. The lock snapping, the door crashed open. 3 figures stepped inside, tall, armored. And moving with precise coordination, their faces were hidden behind black visors, the wet streetlight. From outside glinted off the barrels of their plasma rifles. Evan's first instinct was to grab the wrench on the table. But Luma's voice cut through his thoughts. "Stay down," she said, her tone so sharp it made him freeze. The first soldier aimed at her, a harsh alien command echoing through the room. Before Evan could even blink, Luma moved. It wasn't like a normal step or a run. It was a blur. Her arm shifted, metal sliding open, revealing a weapon that looked like a mix between a blade and an energy emitter. She was behind the first soldier before his trigger finger twitched. A flash of light, and his weapon fell in 2 pieces. His visor cracked, sparks sprang, he dropped. Without a sound, the other 2 opened fire, bolts of plasma cutting through the air. Luma twisted and moved between the shots like she had known where they would be before they were fired. One blast missed Evan's head by inches, searing the wall behind him. She grabbed one soldier by the chest plate, lifted him off the ground, and slammed him into the wall so hard the panels dented. The last soldier tried to back away, shouting into a cum device. But Luma's arm retracted and transformed again. This time into something smaller, deadlier, a short barrel that glowed deep red. One shot and the soldier's cum exploded in his hand, sending him stumbling into the rain outside. The fight was over in less than 10 seconds. Evan stood frozen, his wrench still clutched tightly, his mind trying to catch up with what he had just seen. Luma turned to him, her voice calm again. "They will send more," she said, as if they had just dealt with an inconvenience rather than a deadly assault. Evan's hands trembled. "What? What are you?" he asked, the question heavier now. She looked at him, her blue eyes softening. Something they should never have built. She walked over to one of the fallen soldiers, scanning a small device on his wrist. "Locator beacon." She explained, "They know I am here." She crushed it in her hand, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Outside, the rain was coming down harder. Lightning flashed in the distance. Luma began gathering tools and packing a small bag with incredible speed. "We cannot stay," she said. They will surround the area in minutes, Evan's voice cracked slightly. You're telling me you were hiding in the junkyard because these people? Things were hunting you. She didn't stop moving. Yes, and if they catch me, they will not let you live either. You know too much now. They slipped out the back door into the narrow alley, the sound of boots splashing in puddles somewhere. Nearby, Luma kept one step ahead, her head turning slightly every few seconds. Listening, they reached the edge of the junkyard, its massive piles of scrap rising like dark towers against the night sky. Luma moved quickly, weaving between the heaps, her steps silent. Evan tried to keep up, slipping more than once in the mud halfway through the yard. A bright beam of light cut across their path. Voices shouted, and shapes began to move in from both sides. "Trap," Luma said flatly. She pushed Evan into the shadow of a large, rusted freighter hull. "Stay here until I come back, Evan." Grabbed her arm. "You can't fight them all." She looked at him for a moment, and in her calm, almost human expression, he saw something like regret. "I don't fight because I can win. I fight because I must." Then she was gone. Melting into the darkness, the sounds came seconds later. Shouts. Bursts of plasma fire. The crash of metal. Evan could see flashes of blue and red. Light reflecting off the wet scrap piles. It was over as quickly as it started. Silence settled again, and then she reappeared, walking toward him, not a single scratch on her silver alloy skin. "Come," she said simply. "We have more time." But not much, as they moved deeper into the maze of metal. Evan realized that the fear he'd felt earlier was changing into something else, a dangerous mix of awe and trust. He knew now that Luma was not just an assistant, not just a runaway machine. She was something far more dangerous. And far more valuable. In the distance, faint through the rain and wind, a siren began to wail. A sound that promised they weren't safe yet. The siren grew louder, echoing across the mountains of rusted metal. Evan could feel it in his chest, a deep vibration that made the air feel heavy. Luma stopped for a second, scanning the horizon with her glowing eyes. "They are coming from 3 directions," she said calmly. "We must move toward the riverside of the yard. It is the only gap they cannot close quickly." Evan followed close behind as they weaved through narrow paths between scrap piles, the wet ground sucking at his boots, each step harder than the last. He could hear the thud of armored boots hitting metal somewhere behind them. Then the sharp whine of drones powering up overhead. A beam of light cut through the darkness, sweeping across the yard. Evan ducked instinctively. But Luma didn't stop. Her left arm split open, forming a thin barrel that glowed faint orange. One precise shot and the drone exploded in a burst of sparks. The pieces raining down over the junk. "Keep moving," she said, her voice still calm. Evan couldn't understand how she stayed so steady while everything felt like it was closing in on them. They reached an open area where old starship hulls lay side by side like the skeletons of giant beasts. Luma slowed, scanning again. "They are here," she said. Evan opened his mouth to ask who, but then the shadows ahead moved. 5 armored soldiers stepped out from behind a freighter hull, their rifles already aimed. In the center stood a taller figure in darker armor, his visor marked with a single red line, his voice carried clearly over the rain. "Unit L7X. He called, "You have been classified as irreversibly compromised. Submit now, and we will terminate you quickly." Evan's heart pounded. He looked at Luma. "L7X. He asked under his breath. She didn't answer. Instead, her blue eyes dimmed, then flashed red for just a moment. "They gave me that name," she said softly. "It is the name of a weapon, not a person." The commander stepped forward. "You have killed 2,843 confirmed targets, most before your corruption was detected. We cannot allow you to continue existing." The number hit Evan like a punch. his mind racing to picture what that meant. Luma turned her head slightly toward him, her voice low. "I told you I was built to remove threats. I never lied, then." Without warning, she moved. The first two soldiers fired. But she was already past them, her arm shifting mid-strike from blade to cannon. One blast sending a soldier spinning into a heap of scrap. The second tried to block, but her blade cut. Through his rifle-like paper, the commander barked an order and the remaining soldiers spread out. Firing in short bursts to pin her down, Luma didn't retreat. She advanced. Her movements a perfect balance of speed and precision. She never wasted a strike, never moved without purpose. Evan stayed low, crawling toward a pile of parts for cover. But a plasma bolt hit the ground near him, sending hot debris into his face. He yelped in pain. Luma turned instantly, her eyes locking on the soldier who had fired. The next second, that soldier was down, his weapon crushed under her foot. The commander tried to flank her, but she seemed to know his position before he moved, her blade locked with his weapon. The force sending sparks flying, they pushed against each other. The sound of grinding metal filling the air. "You can't run forever," the commander said. "You are a machine. You will wear down." Luma's voice was colder now. "Machines are only limited by their makers, and mine are dead to me." She pushed hard, sending him stumbling back. Then struck his rifle, breaking it in half. The commander signaled a retreat, his armor smoking from a near miss. The soldiers fell back quickly, disappearing into the rain. But Luma didn't relax. "They will return with more," she said. That was only the first wave. Evan stood, still shaking. 2,000. 800. His voice cracked. "That's not possible." Luma looked at him. "It is, and I remember each one." For the first time since he met her, her voice wasn't calm. It was heavy, almost sad. She started moving again, guiding him toward the far fence of the junkyard. The sirens had faded, replaced by the distant roar of approaching engines. "We must leave this city before sunrise," she said. "If we don't, there will be nowhere left to run." Evan followed. The image of her in battle burned into his mind. A part of him still feared her, but another part, the part that had watched her risk herself to shield him, couldn't let go. In the distance, the faint glow of the river lights flickered through the rain. Luma didn't look back, but her sensors already told her what Evan didn't know yet. The second wave was less than 10 minutes away, and this time they wouldn't just be soldiers. The rain had turned into a cold mist that clung to everything. The river's dim lights reflected off the wet metal heaps. Evan's breath came in short bursts, his boots slipping on the slick ground as he tried to keep up with Luma. She moved quickly, but not recklessly, her head turning slightly every few steps, scanning the air, the ground, and the distant hum of engines. "They're almost here," she said, her voice steady but quieter than before. Evan could hear it too. Now, a deep, rhythmic sound. Not like the boots of soldiers, but heavier. Sharper, mechanical. "What are they?" he asked. Luma's eyes flickered. "Hunters," she said simply. "Machines made to track and kill. Things like me." The sound grew louder, like claws striking steel. The air carried a faint, metallic scent. They reached the far edge of the junkyard, where a collapsed section of fence leaned outward toward the riverbank. Evan moved to climb through, but Luma grabbed his arm. "Not yet," she said. "If we go now, they'll follow our heat trail across open ground and catch us before we reach the docks." A sudden crash echoed through the yard. Something big had landed nearby. The metal piles trembled. Evan's heart pounded in his chest. "Move," Luma ordered, pushing him toward a narrow path between two massive stacks of engine parts. They moved quickly, the sound of claws scraping closer with every step. Evan glanced back and froze. A shape emerged from the shadows, tall, twice the height of a man. Its body a mix of black armor and exposed cables that pulsed with red light. Its head a smooth, featureless dome except for a single vertical slit glowing crimson. It moved without hesitation, stepping over scrap piles as if they were nothing. Luma turned to face it, her arm shifting into a heavy cannon. She fired. The shot hit the hunter square in the chest. The impact sent sparks flying, but the machine barely slowed. Its head turned toward her, the red slit narrowing. It's shielded, Luma said under her breath. Evan's panic rose. Then what do we do? She glanced at him. You run? I'll keep them here. No, Evan said immediately. I'm not leaving you. Her gaze held his for a moment. Then she nodded once, as if making a decision. Then follow me and do exactly as I say. They darted between more scrap piles, the hunter moving after them with terrifying speed, its claws tearing through metal like paper. Another crash came from the right, a second hunter dropping into view, its legs bending unnaturally before straightening with a hiss. Evan realized they were being herded, pushed toward the center of the yard. Luma stopped suddenly, pulling him behind a massive, overturned cargo container. Listen to me, she said quickly. If they catch me, you will take the emergency core from my chest. It will shut me down, but erase everything they can use. Do you understand? Evan shook his head violently. I'm not shutting you down. Her voice lowered, almost soft. Evan, if they take me alive, I will not be me anymore. I will be what they made me. And you will be the first target. The words made his stomach twist, but before he could respond, the metal above them was ripped away. One of the hunters reached down, its claws slicing into the edge of the container. Luma pushed Evan back and leaped upward, meeting the machine head-on. Her blade arm clashed against its claws, each impact sending shockwaves through the air. Evan stumbled out of the container and saw the second hunter moving in from behind her. Without thinking, he grabbed a loose power cable from the ground and hurled it toward the second hunter's legs. The cable sparked wildly when it hit a puddle. The machine jerked for a split second, enough for Luma to spin and drive her blade deep into the first hunter's joint. A shower of sparks burst as the leg collapsed. Move, she shouted. They ran again, the surviving hunter following relentlessly. Luma fired several more shots over her shoulder, each one glancing off the machine's shield. They reached a section of the fence where the metal had been corroded by years of water damage. Luma ripped it open with her bare hands, shoving Evan through first. Go to the docks, she said. Find a cargo ship leaving tonight. He grabbed her wrist. You're coming too, she hesitated, her eyes flickering between blue and red. Then she stepped through after him. They slid down the muddy riverbank, the sound of the hunter tearing through the fence behind them. In the distance, Evan could see the faint outlines of docked freighters, their running lights glowing in the mist. But Luma knew the hunter was still coming, and she also knew something Evan didn't. This wasn't the last one. There were more, and once they crossed the river, their real pursuit would begin. The river mist was thick, hiding the far side in a pale curtain. The sound of dock machinery groaning in the night mixed with the steady thrum of freighter engines. Evan's boots splashed through shallow puddles as he ran, Luma close beside him, the cold air carrying the faint metallic scent of the hunter behind them. They reached the edge of the dockyard where towering cranes stood like silent sentinels over stacks of cargo containers. Somewhere ahead, a freighter horn sounded, deep and slow. That's our ship, Luma said, her eyes glowing faint blue in the mist. If we can reach it, we can disappear. Evan could hear the hunter now, claws striking concrete, each step impossibly steady. No rush, no hesitation. It knew they had nowhere else to go. Luma pulled him into the shadow of a container stack, her hand gripping his shoulder. If I fight it here, you'll have time to board, she said. Evan shook his head immediately. I'm not leaving you. She didn't argue. Instead, she opened a compartment in her chest and pulled out a small, glowing cylinder, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. "This is my core," she said softly. "If I give it to you, I can't move. But I can't let them have me. If I fall, you destroy this." Evan stared at it, his hand trembling. "I'm not taking that, Luma. We both make it, or neither." The sound of the hunter grew closer, heavy footsteps echoing between the containers. Then the red glow of its visor cut through the mist. Luma stepped forward, her arms shifting into her blade. The light along its edge brighter than Evan had ever seen. "Stay behind me," she ordered. The hunter lunged, faster than its size should allow. Luma met it head-on, the clash sending sparks into the air. Evan ducked to the side, looking for something, anything he could use. His eyes landed on a large magnetic crane hanging above a container stack. Its control panel was only a few meters away, while Luma fought, her movements a blur of silver and light. Evan sprinted toward the panel. The hunter noticed him and swung. One massive arm in his direction, Luma intercepted the strike, the force pushing her back but keeping him safe. Evan reached the controls and yanked the lever. The crane's massive electromagnet descended with a deep hum. He swung it over the fight and dropped it onto the hunter. The magnet clamped down with a violent snap. The machine jerked as its metal frame locked to the magnet. Luma seized the chance, driving her blade deep into the exposed joint at its neck. The hunter's red visor flickered and went dark. The crane lifted the twitching machine high into the air, swinging it out over the river before releasing it. The splash echoed through the docks. And then there was silence. Luma turned to Evan, her eyes still glowing faint red from the fight. "You risked yourself," she said. He smiled breathlessly. "That's what humans do." For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the freighter's engines filling the air. They ran together toward the ship, crew members shouting as they saw them approach. Evan called out to the captain, waving a handful of credits to passengers. "Anywhere you can hide us." The captain hesitated, looking between them, but the urgency in Evan's voice and the faint glow in Luma's eyes made him nod. They boarded quickly, the ramp pulling up behind them, the engines growing louder as the freighter prepared to leave. Evan stood at the railing, watching the misty dock fade, but he couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere more hunters were already searching. Luma joined him, standing quietly at his side. "You could have left me," she said finally. "It would have been safer for you." Evan looked at her. "Maybe. But safer isn't the same as right." Her gaze softened, the faint blue light in her eyes reflecting the stars above the river. "Then I will protect you, for as long as I can," she said. Evan smiled faintly. "Guess that makes us partners now." The freighter's engines roared, carrying them out into the night, away from the city, the junkyard, and the army that wanted her back. For now, they were safe. But both knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, more machines like the hunter would come. And when they did, Evan would be ready, because no matter how dangerous she was, he wasn't letting her face them alone.